Welcome, couples from around the world, to Prepare-Enrich Rally for Relationships. We are Aaron and Jocelyn Freeman, and since we have this hour together, we'll like to tell you more about us here in a little bit.
Yes, and if you're watching from the Prepare-Enrich website and you want to be a part of this fun live chat, you can actually click on the left icon so that you can go to YouTube, and I see a ton of you chatting, communicating, talking about where you're from. So feel free to do that if you're on the Prepare-Enrich website. And go ahead and actually type in the chat where you're watching from, your names, and also type in where you're, what stage of relationship you're in. Are you engaged? Have you been married less than 5 years? More than 5 years? Give us a sense of where you're at in your relationship so we can get to know you a little bit. And while you're doing that, I see people literally from around. I saw Poland, I saw Australia, New Zealand, of course, all of the states. I've seen Georgia, Jersey Shore, Maryland, Texas. This is really incredible. Yeah. How exciting that during these times where we're isolated, we're actually connected. I feel truly connected to all of you. And we also want to say, while you're typing in what stage of relationship you're in, that no matter what you're experiencing in your relationship during these times, it's okay. If you're experiencing great things in your relationship, but maybe you're just feeling a little bit bored or restless, looking for new ways to spice things up, that's great. You're in the great place.
Is this ever going to end? Are we stuck here forever? For how long?
But if you're also in a place where maybe things feel tough right now, maybe you're experiencing challenges in your relationship, you're in the perfect place tonight as well. We're going to have many tools and resources for you. So really, wherever you're at in your relationship, you're okay and you're not alone. That's one outcome that we intend for you, is that you know that no matter what, you're not alone. So I see again, just Singapore is even on here, and I see a lot of people are engaged. I see married 10 years, amazing. Married 47 years, I see. Hey. That is amazing.
We know we have some friends on here from Hawaii, some from here in the States, the Midwest, that just had a baby. So there's so many different seasons you can be on. And tonight is really about ways to strengthen your relationship and not strain it during these times, right? Because it can get strained.
Yeah, I mean, this is a time, honestly, that depending on what actions you're taking and where your focus is as a couple, you can be in the boat of feeling like things are getting strained. And that's where we're going to provide you some resources for that. Or this time, if you put your attention in the right place, you can come out of it stronger than ever. And we truly believe that for you.
You know, on a serious note, the big question right now for you might be, for the husbands, should I let my wife cut my hair? So I actually said, you know what, we're not going to be going outside for a little while. You're not a stylist per se, but I did let Jocelyn cut my hair. And boy, you kind of jacked me on the side cut there for a little bit.
Yes, okay, please tell me in the chat I'm not alone. Like, please let me know in here that you tried to cut your partner's hair as well. And I thought I did pretty well on one side, and then I just kind of made a little line
Actually,
there.
Probably makes it worse. Even if it was symmetrically off, that might be a little bit better than one side good, one side not.
But please tell me I'm not alone in this. So that's a big question right now, is should I even let my partner cut my hair? That's a big thing.
So one of the other big decisions for you right now, right, is, okay, which room do we hang out nowadays? We've been in the living room so much. What should we do? We actually found in our guest room there was a closet that we had not explored. So we hung out in that closet, checked it out. We hadn't been in there for a while. But maybe for you, you grab some lightsabers and you can fight in the living room, get some of your aggression out, or just keep it playful, right? We're keeping it playful here because, yes, you might feel like you're stuck or someone else is dictating what you can do, but hey, you get to choose. You can even fight with lightsabers.
Yes, so that's a big thing going on right now, figuring out where you want to hang out in your life, but also what is there to do besides Netflix? As a couple, right? What else do you do? And so we got a little bit tired of Netflix, and we've been brainstorming some date ideas, which we'll tell you a few date ideas for you. And we got to the point where we said, you know what? What if we host classes for each other? You know, we teach each other a new skill. So Aaron hosted for me Dishwasher 101 because apparently how I do it on the left isn't the right way. You know, I figure they're all getting clean anyway, but he said that's not the right way. So he actually charged me $10 for this class to show me how to fill the dishwasher correctly.
I mean, let's be honest. There are some heavy bowls and pots that just don't go on the top rack, okay? So had to host this class, show Jocelyn something. On a real note, if you are able to teach your partner something, that's a way you can feel contributed to. You can also have some additional fun. So Yeah, you could charge whatever you want.
But please tell me again with the haircut thing, but also the dishwasher thing. You know you have your version of that in your relationship. Whether it's about the dishes, it's about the laundry. So we say that in a joking manner, but really just to start things off light, because I know there's a lot going on that can feel heavy right now. And so really, what are you going to know today? Besides just a funny few stories, tonight you're going to know that you're not alone. You're not alone in experiencing the most common challenges for couples, and we're going to hit on several of those. You're going to have relatable stories. You're going to hear about those common challenges, and you'll have 2 practical ways to strengthen your relationship. Really something you can implement right away, plus Q&A at the end. So go ahead, type in the chat all of your questions about your relationship, because the Prepare-Enrich team is going to be gathering those. And ultimately, so that you can feel hope, support, and empowered. You know, really having actionable things that you can implement in your relationship right after this.
And that's one of the things that's really encouraging to me is that, yes, you've been stuck in your house with your family, with your spouse, and you jump on a live stream like this that Prepare-Enrich wanted to put out there, and all of a sudden, you're with thousands of other couples from around the world, so it can expand this feeling of, okay, I'm not alone. All of us are here together, and it's live. This is a live stream.
Yeah.
You can type in the chat. We'll have an opportunity for you to even share with each other and contribute to each other. So who are these people that are talking to us? Well, we're Aaron and Jocelyn Freeman. We are the Freemans. And a short story here, you're probably going to relate to this if you are someone that is in the engaged, preparing for marriage season. And for those of you that have been married for a while, you know, put yourself back in that place. Jocelyn and I had been dating, and we had a lot of things in common. We kind of knew where we were headed. And in that moment, it was still like, how do I know that you are someone that I'm going to actually get married to?
Yeah.
How do I have that certainty? And it was almost by chance that we took Preparing for Marriage. We took the Prepare-Enrich assessment, and I can be totally honest that it was the answer I was looking for. I knew after that you were the person that I wanted to marry. And I didn't tell her that beforehand, that this is what it meant to me, but after I knew that you were the one I wanted to get married to, and that Christmas on a flight, I proposed to her, and you said yes. So that's how things got started for us. And we are also authors of the new Power Couple book. We've also hosted 42 in-person events. Now, we can't do that right now, but hundreds of online events. And we are now Prepare-Enrich Facilitators and Trainers for the past 4 years. So
and ultimately, it's been such a gift for us, honestly, that assessment. And we shout it from the rooftop oftentimes, like every couple in the world should take the assessment. It really was such a blessing to us and our relationship. And so again, that's a little bit about who we are, but we're really here to be of service to you tonight. And you can just say, hey, Freemans. You don't even have to remember our first names necessarily, which a lot of people do. So again, what is this all about? Tonight is just to remind you that you can either strain your relationship or strengthen your relationship during these times, which obviously you showed up from all over the world, literally, because you're committed to strengthening it. And that's the first step, right? So what are some things that might be showing up in your relationship so that, again, you don't feel alone? Well, you can feel like you're playing too many roles. And type in the chat if this is you, if you're resonating with these. You can feel like all of a sudden you now are teacher and parent and spouse and cleaner and trying to make money, right? And all of a sudden you almost feel even more overwhelmed maybe than you were before. So there's a whole new realm of roles that people are having right now.
Yeah, and you may even feel like they've been somewhat forced on you, like you didn't agree to them, right? That's one of the things where I didn't sign up to be a school teacher. You send your kids off to school for that, but now you're the school teacher, or now your spouse is at home working so much that you find yourself having to be the cleaner and the dishwasher, as well as the lover, the listener, the husband, the wife, the dinner preparer, the clothes washer, you know, all of these things. And honestly, that can feel a little bit overwhelming, like a lot of pressure. Like, you know what? I kind of knew what I got into in the marriage, but this time is really bringing about a lot of things that I didn't feel like I signed up for.
And that creates a ripple effect, which we'll talk about. Like, what is that now creating in your communication and the energy between you two? The other thing you might be experiencing is feeling uncertain about your financial future. There's a lot of things we don't know, and it's natural if you're feeling maybe a sense of uncertainty or stress, that can start to create tension between the two of you. And always remember that your marriage is the center of your relationship, and to not let money dictate the really connection and love between you two. The other thing that you might be experiencing is that you're around each other 24/7.
And that might be new for some of you. Now, you know, Jocelyn and I actually spend 24 hours a day together.
And we have for years.
for years. And that's really like what we intended. But for a lot of you, how many of you are spending 2, 3, 4 times the amount of time together than you were when you were going off to separate jobs? And so that's a real pressure too.
Well, and here's the thing. What we're hearing from a lot of couples is we're around each other all the time, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we feel connected.
Yeah, great point. Yeah.
Just as connected or even more connected, right? So time together doesn't equal connection. And we're going to give you some tools for how to actually have your time together bring you closer together. The other thing is that small conversations might be turning into disagreements, those little stressors, and it just might feel like, man, that same little nagging thing keeps coming up. So remember, tonight is about how to have it strengthen your relationship instead of straining it.
And when we talk about strength versus strain, there are the circumstances and the situations that are happening outside that, you know what, you don't have total control over, but you do have control over whether those circumstances are a strain or become something that can strengthen you, right? And so really the difference is whether you have the tools to leverage those circumstances and some of these situations into strengths, rather than the difference is not having the right tools, i.e. maybe the equipment or the skills, to then have it be something that strengthens you. Right?
Absolutely. So this is tonight hopefully going to be providing you with a few tools that you can implement. All right, so let's get into some of the common questions and things that you can start to take action on. So we've been hearing questions like, what are some at-home dates, right? You're not able to go out. What about providing emotional support for your partner? You know, maybe they're mentally, emotionally, spiritually going through something. How do you support them and support yourself? What about balancing family time versus couple time? You know, when you don't feel like you have a lot of boundaries between that. For those of you who have postponed your wedding or it might turn into postponing, what are some things that you can do? And then what about preparing for marriage? Whether you aren't yet married or if you already are, but how do you keep preparing for the next stage of marriage? So those are some questions that we're going to hit on, and let's get right into some date night ideas.
Yeah, and as we do that, type in the chat if you're on YouTube. Let us know, are you in any of these categories? You know, having any of these common questions come up, and certainly put in your questions that you might have that are on the screen, and we'll be able to come back to those at the very end. The Prepare-Enrich staff will be really collecting those questions that we'll be able to come back to, and we'll answer those towards the end. So the first thing you mentioned.
Yeah, so date nights. Anyone out there, I see a few people already commenting on just like, what can we do to stay occupied? As you saw, we resorted to teaching each other dishwasher classes, but something that was,
for money.
was suggested last week is Aaron said, let's make pizzas and play games. And so he actually found some really unique games that we could use on our iPad, and we played. We had music on and our dog with us. And so that was something where we turned off TV. I get it. It can feel very tempting to watch TV and, you know, it passes the time, but we played that board game and that was a lot of fun. Another thing that is...
Well, let me jump in with one since you're on the iPad.
Yeah.
We'll talk about technology first. And I think we have some family that's also joining us. There's Monopoly now that's virtual, you know, online. You can invite your family members to play with you. So that's honestly super fun. We had like an iPad where we were playing Monopoly, then a computer where we were also Zooming. So we were actually able to see each other and have those side chats if you're, you know, a Monopoly connoisseur while playing Monopoly on another device. So that's if you have a lot of technology available to you. And
another thing too is to think about going on a picnic. Now, of course, put these in the context of your city, you know, and what's allowed and what's safe, but you could find a private place where you can do a picnic. You can actually pack a bag, you know, bring something that you really enjoy, maybe even a little speaker to play music, some chairs, you know, getting outside if you can, of course, staying safe. That's been something, that's been a lifesaver for us every weekend, is going somewhere outdoors, bringing a snack, bringing our dog has been a really great date night. What else? What other ideas?
Yeah, another great one is if you remember back to the earlier stages of your relationship, and some of you may be there, some of you might be the OG couples.
There was 47 years. We saw 47
years together, so think back to those times where you were just getting together. What were some of the things you did? You planned date nights for each other, right? You weren't living together. You invited your partner over, said, I'm going to make a special dinner for you. So what if you recreated that experience?
Yeah.
Act like they didn't live with you and were around you every single minute of the day. Have them be in a room by themselves. Get dressed up. One of you maybe make a really nice meal, set the atmosphere, put the plates out, and then have them knock on the inside of the door from a room and then you go and open it like they were just arriving at your house. Have that be like a date atmosphere, like you were actually going out.
Yeah, and another thing, and I think I saw someone else comment about this as well, is to pick a movie that's set in another country from where you live, and then make food that's correlated with that. So if you want to watch a movie that is framed in Italy, make Italian food, or if it's in China, make Chinese food. And that can be just a fun way, even for something that is watching a movie, you can spice it up and make it more of a date night. And I also saw a couple of people remark about children. Now, here's the thing. What we always say is, even with children, you can get creative. Sure, you might be involving them in a lot of your date nights right now, but find a way. And in fact, we saw someone in our community, they actually had their kids. Now, of course, put it in the context of the right age, but they had their kids, which they volunteered, to make them dinner. So they had candles and they had music on, and then their kids were the servers. Again, the kids were making a game of it. Don't take it the wrong way.
And maybe you could pay them even, for being the servers.
Exactly. So really, even with children, you can get creative. We have people, again, couples in our community, even with young children, and they're under a year, and of course they aren't going to occupy themselves, but they wake up earlier and have a coffee date, or they stay up later, right, and maybe watch a movie or have some wine together in the evening. So even with children, you can get creative.
Yeah, which really brings us into the next question people have is about how do you separate the family time versus the couple time for yourself?
Absolutely. So again, that's about setting priorities. So what we always say is that even if you have children, get creative. So just like I said, just to reiterate, wake up a little bit earlier, or take a lunch break, or during a nap, right? Or afterwards. Don't have kids become a reason that you don't now have quality time. Now, and Aaron had a great idea. Share them about the door.
Yeah, this is really good. So the small chalkboards that you can buy. I'm sure you can Amazon these now if you don't want to go out to the store.
Or sticky notes.
Yeah, sticky note would actually work too. I like the chalkboard where you can write on it and erase it. But you'll put that on your door. So this could be the bedroom door for that couple time. This could also be for the office. You're wanting to, separate the work time also. And put something fun on the door, like, we'll be back in 2 hours. Write a funny note on the door on that board that just lets your family members, your kids, maybe even your spouse know what you're up to. Now, if this is for a couple time, say, again, we'll be back soon, or do not disturb. And what you want to do is actually put a time on there that you will return. And that's really, I think, important for kids, because if you were to do this, they might get antsy. They might want to barge in on you, but give them a time and they'll know that you'll be back soon, so they can look forward to that time to be back with you.
And it's interesting, even with the door thing. So we were talking to a couple today, and they said, well, we're around each other. So we're in the same house, but maybe one person goes to work in one room and the others are with the children. And so they feel like there isn't this separation. They don't feel like after the end of the workday or the day with the children that they're able to come back to being connected. So we talked about, here's something, have a transition activity. So have a way that you're separating from work time, even in a small area, right? So even if you live in a loft or something like that, some way to go, I'm transitioning from work time to family time. Whether family time is with children or just the family of two, whether that's taking a few minutes to meditate or read something or go on a walk or just literally watch a video so that you're splitting your mind so that you can come back. Because otherwise you finish up work time and then you just walk out into the living room. Oh, hey, how are you? Seen ya?
Yeah. It's a great thing for the bedroom too. We know some couples that are actually working in their bedroom. But you want to segment the spaces at least, because you have maybe some stressors, some pressure during work. If you have that going on in the bedroom, then all of a sudden you're creating that memory from being in that room. So you don't have the romantic space. You don't have that space that's separate from where you were doing work and you were really focused and creating momentum, and then having a space where you can relax and really be with your partner.
So really, it could even be a 5-minute transition, just something for you to now go, I want to be connected. So it doesn't just feel like you almost, what I hear sometimes from couples is, I just get the scraps, just a barely leftover energy that you have. So that's a great thing to do.
Yeah, in this case, if you have a great idea for this, separating the family time versus couple time, put this in the chat, and you might get something new from some of the other thousands of couples that are here in the chat as well.
And we see a lot of great questions come in. We're going to have Q&A time, so we're going to try and hit on as many of those. Keep typing in your questions. I also see you writing suggestions for each other, which is awesome.
Yes.
I see date night ideas. I see suggestions for the family time. So I love that you're creating community and adding value to each other. Keep that up. Another thing I want to add to this before we move on is also personal time, right? How do you get personal time? So even with children, maybe it's, hey, I'm going to go in a room by myself for an hour. Could you take care of the kids? Or I'm going to go on a walk, or taking turns exercising. So make sure you're also getting personal time, whether that's 10 minutes if that's all you can do, or it's a couple hours, or maybe you need to talk together and go, you know what, I could actually just use a half a day of just kind of quiet time. It's natural. If you feel like you're just needing some personal time, that's perfectly normal, and just communicate that as a couple and get creative for how you can each have that time.
Let's move on to the next question.
Yeah, so the next thing that a lot of couples have written in about is having to change your wedding plans. And type in the chat, how many of you had to postpone your wedding? First off, I'm so sorry that this happened in the amazing, exciting time that it is. You get engaged. You know, getting engaged is such an exciting commitment, right? And so we understand if that felt disappointing. And, you know, you just really want to first acknowledge that feeling of disappointment. But there's some exciting things that you can do.
And the first thing is to really zoom out and think about what is the main intention and experience that you wanted to have for the wedding. And you might not have even thought about that. You might have just thought, this is the natural next step. We're going to plan the venue. We're going to send out the invites. But really think about, what did you want the wedding experience to be like? Was it to be connected with family? Was it to be getting people together that you love so that you could share your commitment, so that you could have this be a moment that really is different? That you say, we're moving into this marriage phase and this level of commitment and trust and love that we want to create. So by knowing the experience you wanted to have, you may come up with new ideas that, you know, you might not have to be in person for that. So just
Getting
some
creative.
ideas that come off the top of my head would be, if it was maybe hearing from a lot of your loved ones about who you are for them, right? Examples of the love and the type of couple you are. You can have people send in videos to you.
That's a good idea. Like getting family and because here's what he's basically getting to is, you might not feel like you're able to have your family come together, right? I know that when my sister-in-law married my brother, you know, we all flew in to look at wedding dresses and all the things. And if you might be feeling like, I'm not getting that moment, you know, I'm not getting that time of my friends and family flying in to do this wedding planning, get creative. You know, how can you get on Zoom together and say, hey, even though you can't taste this, you know, which cake do you like? It really is just about, how can you still involve your friends and family, even if it's not in person right now?
Yeah, could you have someone that would officiate? They could still be 6 feet from you, could be in your backyard, but you could video record it, and you could have people join the Zoom or join the YouTube Live and still have the ceremony and have people chat and have, you know, you could screen share, bring people on that could share, you know, experiences and moments about you. So
for those who really want it to be right now, like for some people, there's a reason in particular that is your choice, that you still want to get married, even if, you know, you're not able to have a big gathering. And if you're in the boat of, we postponed it because you do want that, use this time as a way to reevaluate. Is there anything you'd want to change? Because I know that once I set that date of we're getting married on this date, it was kind of go time. And there might have been things I rushed the decision because I needed to keep up with the deadline. So because of this additional bonus time, you could call it, maybe you slow down and maybe you go, you know what? Maybe we kind of settled on a couple things. Maybe we'd actually prefer to do a destination, or you know what, I actually prefer it to be smaller or bigger, or I want to involve other things. Like, use this time to reevaluate and see how you can get creative with it. Anything more you want to add to the wedding changes?
No, I think that's great, because not everyone is in that season, but even if you're in that season, you may also be experiencing things about how to emotionally support your partner. Whether is it around a postponing of the wedding, or is it you've been together 47 years and now new challenges are coming up? You feel like you've never experienced a season like this together. So no matter where you're at, how do I emotionally support my partner, depending on where they're at? could be changing daily even.
Yeah, and really this has shown up in my life. Friends and family who are normally very positive and strong have been experiencing challenges, anxiety, uncertainty, fear, and that can start to show up in the relationship, right? Like I know if I'm not in the right headspace, I can start to have that show up in our communication. And so number one, make sure you're checking in on yourself. And what I've had to do, just to be really honest, I've had a few days where I wake up and I'm like, this is still going on. Maybe I'm in the only boat, but I had moments where I was like, oh, I thought that was a dream. Like I thought I was going to wake up and that was a dream. So I've had a few mornings where on our morning walk together, I had to say, you know, I'm not feeling great today. And what I encourage you all to do is vocalize it. Don't just hold it in and just kind of try to power through. Let your partner in. And in fact, we had a call with another couple today. As you can tell, we talk to couples all day long. And he actually said, I feel like you don't tell me how you're feeling. I really want to know. I don't want to just know your to-do list. I don't just want to know that you have 5 things on your to-do list and you're taking care of the kids and you're going out. I actually want to know how you're feeling. And so make sure that you speak up, like in the transition activity or in the morning on your walk, and let your partner in. And maybe if your partner isn't as vocal or forthcoming themselves, ask them, you know, do a check-in. It could be as simple as giving them a hug in the morning and just saying, how are you feeling today? Because really, true talk, like we need to do a mental health check-in with everyone. And your partner could be silently going through something. So we want to make sure that we're checking in on each other.
And a good way to bring this up so it doesn't feel like you're interrupting or something we call blindsiding your partner, because when you just throw out something like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is still going on, I really want to go outside, that emotion can also affect your partner. So what you might try is say, hey, I'm really feeling something, partner, and ask them how you would like them to listen. Say, I really just need to share something. You know, I'm feeling some frustration, so can you just listen to me while I vent?
Yep.
See, this helps your partner by not having to provide a solution. Now, I know I'm speaking probably more to the men here, and you know, when you share things with me, it may be easy to try to come up with a solution because we don't want you to feel that way.
Right.
Man, we don't want our wives to feel like frustrated or disappointed or at their wits' end. But all of a sudden, you know what? They also aren't looking for a solution.
Yeah.
They're looking to just be heard. They're looking for some compassion. They're looking to say, hey, it's going to be totally okay.
Yeah.
Which, you know, really brings me to the point, how about letting each other just be wherever you are?
Yeah.
You know, whatever you're experiencing, just allow it to be there. And I know I've taken that for myself. It's not personal.
Yeah.
You know, you're feeling what you're feeling. So something funny that I actually do is say, oh, I mean, I really hear that you're feeling overwhelmed and you just want this to be over. What is the sound of that feeling, right? It's funny, emotion is energy in motion, and a lot of times we keep that bottled in. But to give our partners the space, maybe on a walk or in a living room, say, what does that actually sound like? And you're like, it sounds like, ah! Letting that out with a sound can actually have you feel free of that emotion. And hey, it's actually okay to laugh from time to time too.
It is, yeah. It really does lighten the mood when he has me do that. And that really speaks to make sure that both of you are having an emotional outlet. Because what we're hearing, especially in the first few weeks of this, when it was kind of for all of us a shock and we weren't really sure how to handle this, it was starting to be something that you were taking out on each other.
Yeah.
We've had those moments, maybe you've had those moments, and you almost don't feel like yourself. And you need to have an outlet for it. Like he said, emotion is energy in motion. So if you aren't letting out that emotion somewhere, whether that's frustration, anxiety, worry, or excitement, it could be any emotion. If you're not letting that out, that's where it can sometimes get targeted at this person that's in the home with you. And so just make sure that you both have an emotional outlet so that it doesn't become something that is tearing the two of you apart. Again, knowing that your connection and your love is the #1 priority.
In this case, if you can do the emoji function in the YouTube chat, drop in the emoji of what your current feeling is. So we
Yeah,
talked
let
about
us
the
know.
sound, but what would the emoji look like of that sound?
Yes. Yeah, I'm looking for some emojis. We'll keep that going. So to go to the next one, preparing for marriage. I see a ton of people on here are getting ready to get married, right? Whether that's in the next month or maybe you're putting it off a couple years. So use this time. I've actually received several messages from couples going, since we postponed our wedding, should we postpone preparing for marriage? No, use this time to dive in, right? That's why we're so grateful for Prepare-Enrich providing these types of resources in the relationship assessment so that you can get rock solid. Like we said at the beginning, this is the time you can strengthen your relationship and come out stronger than ever. So use this extra time. Sunday mornings, having coffee, go through some Preparing for Marriage resources. And again, there's a lot of you who've been married for years, for many years, and use this time to strengthen your relationship and block it in your calendar, because here's the thing we know. If you don't schedule in time for your relationship, other things fill it. You know, it's taking care of the house, it's fixing something up, it's the kids, it's your health. So really schedule in relationship time, whether that's a Friday night after dinner or Sunday with coffee. Like, what are you doing to fill the love tank in your marriage?
The love tank, yeah. And preparing for marriage sounds like, you're not yet married, but you could also say preparing for the rest of your marriage.
Yeah, there you go.
And a great way to do that is to start to look at the areas that make up your relationship. Because how too often does someone ask you, and right now it's going to be a phone call or a Zoom, but someone asks you, how's your relationship going? It's so general.
It's like, oh, we're good. We're good.
It's either good or it's not going as great.
It's not going good, yeah.
So it's really just a reflection of your most recent mood. But when you think about it, your relationship is made up of so many more areas.
Yeah.
You have the area of finances, sexuality, spirituality,
communication,
your mindset, your health, your personal development, communication, your leisure,
conflict resolution,
your parenting, your family. So there literally are all these areas. So actually it's one place to look. If you've been experiencing, right, that, well, I don't know, things haven't been going as great, that's general. Start looking at areas where you really are thriving, where you really are doing great. Maybe acknowledge your partner for your level of communication or for how you have handled finances or how you've even raised your intimacy during this time.
Absolutely.
So really preparing for marriage or preparing for the rest of your marriage, it's powerful to look at where are your strength areas, where are your growth areas, acknowledging the places that you are doing well, and then saying, hey, okay, this other area over here, like our intimacy, let's just get better at it.
Yep.
And when's a better perfect time than right now?
To do a check-in. Like, it's a really great time to do a check-in on where you're at. So let's get into, before we do Q&A, and I see a ton of questions coming in here, so we're really excited, and I see all the emojis. I see lots of heart faces. I love the emojis of how you're all feeling. So before we get into Q&A, we want to provide, like we said, 2 practical tools to strengthen your marriage, no matter what is going on right now. So practical tool number 1.
Yeah, it is focusing on being more assertive. So you could think, oh yeah, I know what assertive means. That's a great tip. Let's define assertiveness. Take this one step deeper. Assertiveness is your ability to express your feelings and ask for what you want. And I know a lot of times I think assertiveness is just expressing myself.
Like talking. Talk.
Yeah, really just talking, and I don't necessarily think that it's asking for what I want.
Yeah, but there's a big difference. There is a difference between just expressing through talking and actually being assertive and asking for what you want. So what does that actually look like?
Some of you might be thinking like, well, how do I actually know my level of assertiveness? Or what is my assertiveness actually right now? Well, for a lot of you, you're a trainer or facilitator or a couple that has taken the Prepare-Enrich assessment. So if you remember, maybe this was a while ago or recent, there's actually relationship dynamics as a part of the assessment, and assertiveness is one of the dynamics. And this can be from very high to very low. So maybe go back and reference and remember, what is my assertiveness? Now remember, you could actually have a higher level of assertiveness with friends and family and with others in your business, with coworkers, but this really is the assertiveness, your ability to express your feelings and ask for what you want in the relationship, with your partner. So what are maybe some impacts if you feel like your assertiveness actually is low, or your assessment told you that your assertiveness was actually low?
What we hear from couples all the time, right, is when one or both of you is low assertiveness, what that creates is this dynamic where you're like, I can't read your mind. I really cannot anticipate your needs, and it can lead to disappointment, right? Because you're disappointed when you aren't having your needs met, but your partner needs to know those. And now there's many different layers. We'd need to be with you for a few more hours to dive into this, but as to why you might have lower assertiveness, But the impact really is that your partner doesn't know. They don't really know exactly what you need. And then you, as the person who's not asserting yourself, can feel frustrated and disappointed. But remember that they can only know when you vocalize it.
And one thing about low assertiveness too, you may think that your partner should know, you know, especially when you've been together for 47 years. We're gonna keep referencing the 47 years. When you're together longer, I mean, there is this sense that you know me and maybe that you should know me. But we change as human beings also.
And this season, your
Seasons
needs
change.
might be different.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
A lot of people are needing additional things right now that they maybe didn't always need in the relationship just because of the stressors and the dynamic of what's going on.
So having low assertiveness can also lead to you personally feeling a little bit more controlled. Maybe you don't feel like you're as free to make decisions. So it might start to seem like that's your partner's fault, but really, that's kind of on you. You know, if your assertiveness is low, you might start to feel controlled or not being able to make decisions. So that's a place for you to look. Okay, where have I not been expressing?
Yeah.
Where do I need to share some more expectations and just share more of what I want so that my partner knows, and then they can support you even better.
So as Aaron said, assertiveness does not mean controlling them, right? So it does not mean I'm going to tell you what to do. That's not how it goes, right? So to give you some examples of what assertiveness might sound like during these times, it can sound like, hey, I'd really love it if we went on walks each morning together without our phones, which I actually said that during this. I said I'd like it to be without our phones, and I want to have that morning time together. Another one might be, I'm feeling a little down today, so I could really use a hug. Tell your partner if you're needing additional physical affection or if it's feeling like a rough day.
Oh, I want to share about that one.
Yeah.
You might think, oh, if I have to tell my partner, then it's not going to feel like spontaneous. It's not going to feel like it's genuine. But really, check this out. If you were to tell your partner more often, hey, I just really need a hug right now, then they know that's something that you need.
Yeah.
So what if in a couple of days, when you're feeling frustrated and you happen to be a little bit more reactive, they say, hey, do you need a hug right now?
Yeah.
Imagine how that would feel. You're like, oh my gosh, you listened, and that was exactly what I needed. Thank you. So sharing with your partner actually will have them remember so that they can actually implement that in the future.
So the final one is saying something like, I'm experiencing some fear and uncertainty. Can we sit down and talk about our game plan? That's really important because so many of us are having fear triggered right now. Money fears, just what's our future going to look like? Is something going on with my job? What are we going to do with our kids? It's being able to sit down and tell your partner. It might feel vulnerable. You know, we want our partner to feel like we're strong a lot of times, but to sit them down and say, I'm feeling some uncertainty. Let's sit down, create a game plan, and I know that whenever we sit down and reprioritize our focus, I feel reconnected to the present moment, and I feel like, all right, we have something we can control. You can only control your focus. We know we can't control the outside world and the circumstances, but you do have power to come back to what's our focus as a couple. So those are some examples of assertiveness, and feel free to type in the chat any questions you have about assertiveness. We're going to go to Q&A in just a couple minutes, but we have one more practical tool to provide for them.
Practical tool number 2 is use active listening, especially when communicating on important topics.
Yeah.
So for those of you that have taken the assessment, active listening is probably something that you recall, but let's look at that a little bit deeper and define that again. You know, so active listening is really the skill that allows your partner to be understood through your listening and restating their message.
Yes, so that's really different, right? You might be saying, well, I hear you, but I don't agree. That's not quite listening, right? Because the whole goal with active listening is that they feel understood. And one thing that we always say to couples is, remember that the goal with communication isn't that you always agree. That might not be an outcome, and in fact, that might be kind of boring to me if we always agreed every single time. But the goal of communication is that you both get to feel understood. And when you're both understood, you then get to actually come up with even better solutions. So what does non-active listening look like?
Yeah,
Let's give an
non-active
example.
listening and maybe some ways that communication typically happens would
Let me do
sound...
it.
Okay, please go ahead.
So let's say I go to him and I go, I see $200 transactions on our credit card bill. You said you were going to stop spending.
Oh, well, yeah, and I mean, I just saw you on Amazon on your phone like 5 minutes ago.
I didn't buy anything. These are the transactions that you said you weren't going to do, but you bought things.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a tough time right now. Like, so what does it matter if I buy something that actually has me feel better?
Because we said we weren't going to. So notice, like, neither of us are getting to feel understood. Now, we just gave an example around finances, but put this in your shoes. Like, what's something that's happened in your relationship lately where it just kind of kept going back and forth? Neither of you got to feel understood. So that's what non-active listening can look like or sound like, right? You're defending yourself. You're, totally ignoring what they're saying. A lot of times, right, you can even kind of point it back to them. Well, no, you're doing it the same way or you're doing it worse. So what you want to do is actually practice active listening where you're communicating more as a we, facing the challenge together rather than taking things so personally. And Aaron and I always say, when you sit down and you focus on active listening, rather than it being against each other, we are side by side looking at the challenge together as a team, as a we. Anything else?
I just love that. I mean, active listening really does allow you to feel more on the same team. And, I'm inspired when I think about the people in the military, and I wasn't personally, but when you think about what they go through, they go into a challenge, which is probably even understating it, but they're on the same team. They're on the same side. They have the same mission, vision, objective. And by doing that, the challenge actually allows them to be more connected than they've ever been, right? People leave the military and they say brothers in arms. These are people that you built these types of relationships and really bonds with people that aren't going to be broken. And that is what this is really all about. And we talked about this time can really strengthen or strain your relationship. But with active listening, it gets you on the same side, looking at the challenge so that with implementing the right tools and skills, it really does strengthen you. Imagine at the end of this, we weren't going to say it, right? The coronavirus.
It's like Voldemort, right? Like you don't want to say the name.
Don't say the name. But imagine telling your kids, we don't have kids, but if we had kids.
We have a dog kid.
Yeah, we'll tell Ellie. Imagine telling your kids in the future, a lot of people went through this really challenging time. And a lot of people won't experience a challenge like this, but you could say that time actually strengthened our relationship, primarily because we used active listening to stay on the same side and be a we, saying, how do we approach this together so that we become stronger and more connected?
So one thing to remind you is that when you're using active listening, you decide who will be the speaker. So it might be like, okay, you be the speaker first, and then I'll be the listener. And here's what we always like to remind people, right, is just because they might be the speaker first doesn't mean you won't get your turn. And that's what can sometimes happen when both of you are just reacting to each other, is because you're like,
well, you're both the speaker.
I need to get my word in. If you both practice active listening, you both get an opportunity. So you can, whether you want a physical object, some people use like, all right, here's our little talking stick, you be the speaker first, or if you just want to, designate it, it's really powerful to have that, right? So the speaker role might say, what I would like more of is so it might be, I would like more quality time. I would like for us to be more proactive about our finances. And the listener role would say something like, what I heard you say is, and you repeat it back. It might feel awkward at first, but if you practice this and this becomes your natural way of communicating, you both get to feel understood. You create better solutions for everything. Conflicts last 5 minutes instead of 5 hours or 5 days. So once you do that, right, and you have shared back what you think you said, then you can even say, it sounds like you're feeling. So if you can even capture what your partner is feeling, man, imagine that. Imagine instead of reacting to them, taking it personally, and then having it compound and become something bigger, the person goes, yeah, that's what I feel. Like, thank you. Thanks for capturing that.
I just have to share on a personal note. This is kind of an advanced topic, like once you get used to active listening in that process. But when you're really listening and you're not just hearing the words, and you can actually get to the spot where your partner is sharing something with you, it's a frustration. Why did you spend money there? You can tell that they're upset, and you just really hear and listen to them and say, it really sounds like you're frustrated about that.
Yeah.
It sounds like you don't feel respected or honored. I mean, in that moment, your partner is going to be wowed.
Yeah.
They're like, wow, you really got me.
Yes.
And that's an amazing relationship. That's a relationship that can face any challenge.
Yep.
You'll always be on the same page. It really is magic to me where you can feel that understood. And that's kind of the power of active listening.
So let's show them briefly in the Prepare-Enrich assessment. Again, we know many of you have taken it, or for some of you, you're looking at taking it. So this is one of the pages where you would learn more about active listening, and it's under the communication category, which I see some questions around communication, so we're going to come back to more of those. So in your report, you would see what your communication results are, and then have some exercises to practice active listening. So go ahead, type more questions that you have in the chat around that. Now, right before we go to Q&A for all of the, I see hundreds potentially of great questions. What do you do next? Well, reach back out to your Prepare-Enrich facilitator, and if you don't have one, reach out to Prepare-Enrich so that you can find one, but find a facilitator that can either help you review your assessment, retake the assessment, or for many of you, if you don't know, you can actually take a couple checkup. So if you want to say, like, where are we at now, and maybe do a relationship tune-up, do a check-in, then take the couples checkup assessment. And type in the chat if you'd like more events like this. Prepare-Enrich ourselves, we want to know if this has been helpful and if you'd like more resources to support you, not only through these times, but afterwards. So let all of us know how we can continue to support you beyond reaching out to your facilitator, taking the couple checkup assessment, and letting them know. So type in the chat if this has been helpful. And now let's get to some of these amazing questions. Are you ready, Aaron, to hear some of these?
Yeah, and I just wanted to say it's honestly amazing to see, thousands of couples get on a live stream, because there's a certain level of common commitment that is here of just having a relationship really be great. And when you're with a community of people like that, that's inspiring.
Yes.
So one of the things is that Prepare-Enrich wanted to put this out there so that you feel inspired, you feel a sense of community, you're really not on your own, and then to take away the practical tips to strengthen your marriage. So what are some of the questions that we have out there?
I think this is really great, and I'm curious to know your thoughts on it, and I definitely had something come up right away. So it was Stefan, I believe that's how it's pronounced, asked how to be assertive and actively listen when one spouse is an introvert and one is an extrovert. So I had a thought really quick, if I can share first.
Please,
then I'll field one over to you. So I love that question, because many of you have that dynamic, where one person is more of an extrovert, one of you is more introverted. So what I would say is, number one, don't expect your partner to communicate exactly like you are. So if your partner is more reserved, more of an introvert, what you could do is set up a checkup time. So that's where maybe a family walk, or Sunday mornings we call it a family meeting. So it's like your check-in, and that would be the time to ask them questions. So it's like, hey, hey, let's talk about our relationship. How do you feel? Maybe by prompting them with some questions, that'll support the introverted person, whereas they might not be the type that walks into a room and says, you know what, let me just tell you exactly how I'm feeling. And go ahead.
Well, it actually reminds me of those that are mental processors and would shut down because you want to think through something.
Yes.
That's kind of how I was. You could even prepare some questions for your partner, and then with that set time say, here's some questions that I thought of, right? This isn't for everybody, but for those of you that like to think through some of your thoughts, be a little bit more prepared so that you can actually share your feelings and actually be kind of maybe a little more clear.
Yeah.
That would be a great way to set your partner up too.
And I love too, because this is related to another question I saw from, let me check the name.
Great question, by the way, Stefan?
Yes, it was. Carmel, that's similar to the introvert-extrovert, said, can you be assertive without being naggy? So what came up what came up for me immediately was, when we say to couples, don't blindside your partner. So you actually want to go to your partner and say, hey, there's something I'd like to share with you, and is now a good time? And then that sets them up to go, okay, yeah, I'm in the frame of mind where I can focus, and then share it. It can feel naggy, if people want to use that term, if it feels like a blindside, like it's out of context. They're cooking or they're working, and then you come in with just like a slight remark.
Yeah, or if the upset seems to be directed at them, that they were the cause of it. So I know this sounds like a simple shift, and it really is. The assertiveness is really about sharing from more of an I perspective rather than, we'll just call it a blame, or like a point finger saying, hey, you did this and it's causing me to feel this way, rather than you want to start the conversation by saying, hey, I've been feeling this way, and you can share what you'd like to be different. Another great way, I'll just add this in, is to start a conversation with what your positive intent actually is. So you pause for a minute. We'll go back to the finances and Amazon. You could start by saying, why did you buy something on Amazon? I thought we had an agreement that you weren't going to do that. I could come to you in the same way and say, you know what? My commitment or my intent is actually that we are really on the same page with finances. So then now your partner knows that it's a positive intent. You want to have a conversation leading to a positive outcome. And then that allows you to get into more of a detailed conversation about, well, you know, buying that thing on Amazon didn't have me feel on the same page, but they're already set up that, hey, you're approaching this together.
Yeah, and I saw a couple great questions that are similar too, so I'll answer those together. So Allie asks, what tips do you have for de-escalating arguments? And I see that's somewhat in the same realm of how do you problem solve together? And so what's powerful, right, is an argument is often coming up when one person gets emotionally triggered or you haven't been able to sit down and have a focused conversation about it. So it's been just one of those things that you like lightly talk about, but then you brush it under the rug because you get distracted.
And then you talk about it as you're walking to a different room
Yeah,
or
exactly.
making dinner.
So when it comes to de-escalating, a couple things that we'd say. Number one, try to catch things earlier. So you want to, that's why we say do a check-in, because then you can catch things. Like rather than us starting to have an argument that gets escalated about finances because we haven't been addressing it, every week when we have our family check-in, we're going, hey, what do we need to address around finances? And by the way, that family check-in needs to be a safe space where it's a no judgment, no arguing zone. So that's one thing I would kind of more proactively to avoid the escalation. The other thing is going back to the one speaker, one listener. So a lot of times it's getting escalated because it's like you say something and then I react back and then as you react back, we're not doing speaker-listener roles, right? So you can help keep things a little bit calmer if you do take those turns. And again, you don't miss out on your turn. And what you have to do, believe me, I get it. I had some bad habits to break, really, to be honest. I had some patterns to break around conflict. So I had to bring more awareness to how I was talking and acting and not reacting right away. So those are a couple things I'd offer to you around de-escalation.
As you look for another question, now I want to do a quote here by Albert Einstein. I really love this one. He said, the solution to a challenge will not be found at the same level of thinking that the problem was found in. Okay, I didn't do a good job paraphrasing that. But what that means is the state, the emotional state, the level of thinking that you're in when you're in conflict is not going to be the state you want to be in trying to find a solution. So the first solution for everyone is to get back to the state of being connected or even peace or even neutrality from the place of feeling blindsided, disrespected, disconnected. So first thing, you got to get back to the level of being a we. So you're changing your emotional state, you're changing your level of thinking. That's a much better place when you're a team to find a solution that's going to be even better than what you could have thought of in that other state.
And a lot of questions that have come in are similar to what do we do if we're either long distance or because you're not married and you chose to live separately until you get married, what can you do, right? Well, a couple of things that you can do kind of logistically and then more on the emotional side. Logistically, make sure you're FaceTiming plenty, right? And get creative. So in fact, a little shout out to my brother and his now wife. They were long distance for years, wasn't it? And I believe, I'm forgetting now, but at least quite a few years. And
so sorry we don't have the exact number.
I know, sorry, my brother. And what was great was they didn't just get online and go, so how was your day? And kind of, it can start to feel monotonous and you don't get to feel connected to each other that way. So what they did was they actually set up creative dates. So what they would do is send care packages to each other.
Oh, yeah.
And it'd be like, all right, hey, we're going to do pizza night together. Or hey, let's do a game night. And so they'd plan those dates from the distance. So even if your distance is a mile, because again, you just chose to live in separate places till you're married, get creative for how you can still have those date nights.
Blake will be proud that I remembered this.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yep.
What they did, which was so genius, they had a journal and they would pass the journal back and forth to each other. So while Blake, in this case, had the journal, he would journal sometimes every day or often about the relationship, about the vision that he had, actually even share some of the challenges that he came up with. And then when he was able to see Danielle, which might be a few months at a time, they changed hands with the journal. So now Danielle had it. So she was able to even read back, and she got more of an experience of what life was actually like for Blake reading through it. And then she would journal herself in the days to come, so then when they saw each other again, they'd pass it off. I mean, I thought that was one of the best ideas I've ever heard.
I think another thing that you can do if you're in separate places is to focus on how you can have new and different conversations. Because again, it can feel not as connecting if you're just having the same old conversation. So whether that's retaking the Prepare-Enrich assessment or taking it for the first time so that you have new things to talk about, to have that sense of romance and aliveness in your relationship and to stay connected, it really comes down to the quality of conversation. So by retaking the assessment, it could give you new things to talk about, or it could be looking for new resources to learn something together. So maybe it's learning something new about relationships, so maybe you want to watch some trainings around communication, or it could be something more about a hobby. Maybe you start to learn a new language from a separate place together. So having creative ways to still feel like you're spending time together constructively rather than just kind of the same old catch-up conversation.
You have another question?
Yeah, so a couple have alluded to, Aaron, and I'll ask this to you. I see Vanessa asked a question similar to some that I see is, what do you do when you and your husband handle the quarantine differently because they maybe have different personality types and also different ways of handling emotions? I saw a few of you asked about what do you do if your partner handles their emotions differently during the quarantine?
Well, initially it makes me think of having an agreement. No, it's not like a sexy thing, right? This isn't where in your first dates together, you didn't ask the question, right? So tell me about the expectations that you have, or let's talk about creating agreements. Well, when you think about any upset, really comes from having an unmet expectation. And sometimes that expectation is shared and sometimes it's not, as Jocelyn mentioned, and then you're alluding to, you have different ways of processing this time, feeling different emotions. Some want to be on their own, some want to talk it out. So it really is about coming to, I mean, we like to say 4 power couple agreements. 4 agreements of how you have your conversations or how you have your personal time, because a lot of it can depend on, I want to talk about this right now, so that feels like an interruption. I actually mentioned the person that's a mental processor isn't ready necessarily to start to share because they haven't really processed it for themselves. So an example of an agreement is to say, hey, how about for this next week, because it seems like we're really experiencing a lot of different emotion, that at 7 p.m. we just block in the calendar a half hour where we talk about the things that we want to talk about. And this at least keeps the interruptions from happening during the day, frustrations from happening, and you also know you're going to have a time in the future where you're going to be able to share, and then that mental processor can also be more prepared with maybe some lines of questions or some answers already. Yeah,
I like your point about really being more proactive, right? So even if you have different personality types and maybe one person is being more quiet and not expressive about what they're feeling, or they want to be more internal, but the other person's like, I want to go outdoors, I want to go out, is to be more proactive. And so sitting down together and go, how can we both have our needs met here? How can we get creative? So it might be, you know, hey, for me, it would just be quiet time together, but for you, it'd be that we go find a new trail that we can hike. Again, if it's safe and your area allows it. So finding a way more proactively that in the week, both of your needs can be met, but they could also involve the both of you, or again, maybe it's an opportunity for some alone time. There's definitely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I have one more before, as you look for another question. And this is interesting, right? It's powerful to even take yourself out of the challenge like it's just you. And what I mean by that is it's actually an opportunity to impact other couples. If that's something that you really are out to do, is impact and contribute to other couples, then think about the challenge that you're going through as not just for you. Because how many other people are experiencing that? There's thousands of us on this right now, many of us going through very similar things. So think about this. Your partner is not meant to be everything for you. Not every single role, not an outlet, not all the time. So have another outlet. So maybe you do a video blog, maybe you do a Facebook Live, maybe you do a Zoom and get people together. Maybe what you're going through, you're meant to teach or share to somebody else because they're going through it, and they'll feel more relieved by you sharing that. So maybe think that what you're going through isn't just for you to share with your partner, that if you put it out there and invite others into it, it can be a way to benefit many other couples as well.
Yeah, there's so many great questions. Feel free. We've got a couple more minutes for maybe 1 or 2 more questions, so feel free to type in any burning questions here. I did see one around just how do we relieve our anxiety around marriage? And that's one thing. I love that you're bringing that up now. Maybe you're nervous around for getting married, for those of you who aren't yet, is to either, number one, have a mentor. So do you have a Prepare-Enrich facilitator that you can reach out to? Someone that you can talk to help navigate like what fears are coming up for you and where did those fears come from. The Prepare-Enrich assessment also, if you haven't taken it and you're having anxiety around your marriage, again, that's how Aaron knew he wanted to marry me, because for him it was kind of otherwise like, how do we really know we're ready?
Honestly, I'm like, how do I know with like a 100% certainty?
Yeah.
I mean, I was looking for 100% certainty. Maybe some need 100%, maybe not, but really it was like, I get what you're saying. Like, how do I really know? Because this feels like the biggest commitment that I've ever made, and it probably will be in your life, but how do I make sure this is the right decision?
Absolutely. So for you, if you're feeling any of that, reach out to a mentor, a facilitator, take the assessment so that you have awareness, and then finding additional tools and resources, whether we can be a part of that, Prepare-Enrich can be a part of that, any mentor in your life, to help you have tools. Because here's the thing, if you have the right tools and skills, then you don't have to worry. Because if you have the right communication skills and we believe that behind every challenge, any conflict is a skill that you can learn. And what a lot of people do is just kind of hope it works out, right? Like, I hope our love for each other is enough. Whereas the beautiful thing about Prepare-Enrich is they are ready to provide people the skills, the tools, so that you know what to do when you encounter different things. So let me see if there's one more question for you, Aaron. Keep them coming. I love these so much. Keep them coming here. Okay, I see people asking about dedicated time. So a couple of people have said, what if my partner's busy, you know, working? I know a lot of people are traveling for work or getting really creative or parenting. And I also saw people saying, you know, how do I not feel like I'm bugging or interrupting my partner? And that goes back to, just as a reminder, to have those time blocks and those boundaries. So whether it's a sign on the door, hey, I'm gonna work from 9 to noon and then I'm gonna take a lunch break, and we'll as a family have lunch. And then from noon to 3, I'm gonna work again, then let's go on a family walk. So being able to talk about when that connecting time will be, and just again being more proactive, but remembering, I love that a lot of you are kind of alluding to this whole idea that a lot of us are experiencing, which is I'm around you a lot, but that doesn't guarantee connection. So that again goes back, we always say that great connection comes from great communication. So what are you communicating on? And one more thing we say about that too, I wasn't even expecting to say this, but talking about your to-do list isn't communication, that's transferring information. So talking about what you have to do all day isn't gonna lead to like this vivacious, passionate, loving relationship. Now it's necessary, believe me, I love a good to-do list. I love getting on the same page. But go back to, if you're not feeling connected, you don't feel like it's actually quality time even though you're together, what are you talking about? Find new and different things to have a conversation about. Anything else you'd add there?
Yeah, it was a perfect sort of transition.
Yeah.
If you're feeling a lot of the frustration still, just want to make this as maybe the last point. It's probably that you're focusing too short term. So yes, as Jocelyn mentioned before, you know, rather than be so concerned about things that have happened in the past or thinking that's going to continue, you're thinking more so about what is right now. And the more that you think about what is right now, then you can get more frustrated. When's this quarantine going to end? Or we keep on having the same argument. Are we going to be able to build the right skills? Is marriage the right time? I mean, you're thinking more about the right now. So if you expand the time frame in which you're thinking about to the future, to the vision, to what you're going to create, think about the end of the year, think about next year, and start to see yourself in that future. Start to see yourself as the couple you want to become. Your communication level, the passion, the excitement, the more you talk about the future and the vision that you're creating, you expand this time frame and you're not just so limited to, oh my gosh, this is what's happening right now. So those two things, expanding your time frame in which you're thinking, and then also expand your conversations and your language and your thoughts from not just what's happening, because what's happening next comes as a reflection of your thoughts.
Yeah.
So think about the future. See it as it's happening now. Think about the emotion and the experience and the excitement of what's going to be happening next year. That'll give you that state that you'll be more connected, and you'll start to dream and have more passion together.
Yeah, and really that's a great closing note, to just remember that what you focus on in your relationship right now will either strengthen or strain your relationship. And we know you showed up tonight because you're committed to it strengthening, not being on the straining side. And so a couple just reminders. Number one, you're not alone. Anytime you think you're the only couple going through it, I promise you there are 10,000 people going through it at the same exact time. So make sure you have a support system, facilitator, friends that you can talk to about it, because I know it can feel isolating when you think it's just you. So make sure that you have support resources like that. You know, let Prepare-Enrich know if this has been helpful and you'd like more tools like this. And remember to use active listening, maintain your assertiveness, and feel free to reach out with more questions as well. Again, you want to have an outlet, and make sure that you two are taking care of yourselves as individual, your mental and emotional health. Make sure you're doing a relationship check-in right now. We truly believe, and in closing, really, you can become stronger than ever after this. I mean, watch out, world, unshakable, unbreakable, really getting ready for that. And for us, marriage has been a gift, and it's been a teacher, and we've had moments that are really challenging, but I'm telling you that marriage is a gift. And I'm really grateful to be married to you. I'm grateful to Prepare-Enrich for the assessment.
Listen to this.
He got the certainty to ask me to marry him from Prepare-Enrich assessment, so I'm so grateful to Prepare-Enrich. I'm grateful to all of you watching from around the world. We saw you all joining. Truly, I feel so connected to all of you. I'm inspired by you. Any final closing notes?
No, I just thought you just did such a great job
Aw.
today. I'm happy to be sitting here with you and doing this work. And honestly, I think if anybody got contributed by another couple in the chat,
Yeah.
you know, reach out to them. Maybe build a friendship. You know, there could be a bunch of connections and friendships and other relationships that were built out of this. So there's a ripple effect that can happen here, and I'm just so glad I could do this with you.
I'm grateful too. All right, everyone, have an incredible evening. Stay happy, healthy, and connected. Talk to you soon.